Welcome back to the show. This week, one number out of the corporate world stopped me in my tracks, and I want you to hold it in your head as we go. The payroll startup Remote, which most listeners outside HR have probably never heard of, reported a 50% jump in revenue per employee. That's not unusual on its own. What is unusual is how they got there. They didn't hire a single new human being, not one. Revenue went up by half, headcount stayed flat. That sentence 3 years ago would have broken the rules of business as we knew them. The whole model of scaling a company has been, if you want to grow output, you hire more people. More people means more payroll, more management, more office space, more friction. The new revenue you bring in pays for the new humans you needed to bring it in. That equation has held since the invention of the company. This week, it broke. Welcome to what's officially being called the agentic AI era. Let me walk you through what just happened. For the last 2.5 years, basically since ChatGPT, the entire tech industry has been obsessed with one question. What can AI say? Can it write a marketing email? Can it summarize a contract? Can it draft a memo that doesn't get you fired? We were grading models on how clever their outputs read. This week made it official. That era is over. The question now is no longer what AI can say, it's what AI can do, autonomously. At Google I/O 2026 a few days ago, Sundar Pichai officially declared what he called the agentic Gemini era. He rolled out the new Gemini app as a proactive 24/7 assistant. Notice that word, proactive. Up until now, we've been using AI like a consultant. You ask a question, it hands you a strategy document, and then you, the human, go execute the strategy. The work is still your work. You just got a better briefing. Agentic AI isn't a consultant, it's a contractor. A contractor doesn't hand you a blueprint and say good luck. A contractor pours the concrete, checks if the walls are straight, adjusts when something goes wrong, without coming back to you for permission every 5 minutes. That's the shift in one sentence. And this week, that contractor is being deployed in places that should make your eyebrows go up. TechCrunch reported this week that Robinhood is now allowing AI agents to execute stock trades on behalf of users, not suggesting trades, actually placing them. Have you sat with what that means? An autonomous system running in the background, buying and selling real money in a real market while you're asleep. Over at XAI, they integrated Grok into something called KiloCode, an open source agentic coding platform. To understand why that's a big deal, picture the old workflow. Developer writes a prompt, AI spits out some code. Developer copies it, pastes it, tests it, it breaks. Developer asks for a fix, repeat. The AI is a tool, the human is the operator. KiloCode flips it, the agent writes the code, tries to compile it, reads the error message when it fails, reasons through why it failed, rewrites it, tests it again, and commits it to the repository, without a human doing anything. That loop, reason, act, observe, reason again, is the heart of what makes agentic AI different from everything that came before, which is why we're also seeing the panic. TechCrunch noted significant layoffs this week at ClickUp, the productivity software company. And every time a story like that hits the news, the immediate read is jobpocalypse. Tomorrow, all human work is obsolete. I want to push back on that read because it's the noise. The signal is something more nuanced and honestly more interesting. Companies aren't deleting jobs, they're re-architecting them. The routine, multi-step work is shifting to agents. The humans are being promoted to manage them. You're no longer the one writing the code. You're managing a fleet of 5 AI contractors who write the code, and your job is knowing which ones to trust with what. That's how you break the productivity ceiling. That's how a company like Remote grows 50% on the same headcount. Sit with that for a second. Your job in 2 years probably isn't going away, but it almost certainly looks different. The question is whether you're learning to manage agents now or waiting to be told you should have started. But here's the friction nobody's solved yet, and it might be the single biggest issue in tech this week. If my fleet of AI contractors is out there acting as market participants, trading my money on Robinhood, pushing updates to a live production app, who's liable when they screw up? Because human interns mess up all the time. They delete production databases. They send the email to the wrong client. The difference is, when a human intern hallucinates, you have decades of employment law to figure out who pays. When an AI agent hallucinates a margin trade that wipes out your account, the legal terrain is basically uncharted. Right now, the answer is brutally simple. The liability rests entirely on the deployer. That's you, or the business using the agent. You broke it, you bought it. Robinhood isn't holding the bag if your agent makes a bad trade. You are. This is why the engineering blogs from Anthropic and Google have suddenly become obsessed with what's being called capability governance. It's the work of building strict permission layers. Code that dictates exactly what an agent is and isn't allowed to click, execute, or transact. Think of it like teaching a teenager to drive. You don't just hand them the keys and say good luck. you build in the guardrails first. The real race right now isn't just building more capable agents, it's building agents that are bounded enough that a business can actually deploy them without facing a class action lawsuit in 18 months. Now, if you're running an army of, say, 1,000 autonomous interns, those interns don't need office space, but they absolutely need processing power, a staggering amount of it. Snowflake, the data cloud company, signed a $6 billion deal with AWS this week. $6 billion, specifically for AI compute, just to lock in the raw processing materials. Compute at this point is the metabolic energy of the digital economy. And here's the math that's flipped under everyone's feet. In the old generative AI world, when you asked a chatbot a question, the model ran inference, the technical word for computed an answer, basically once. One pass, done. An agent doesn't work that way, because an agent loops, think, act, observe, think again. It runs inference dozens or even hundreds of times for a single task. The workload didn't go up linearly. It went exponential. NVIDIA calls this the scale-up problem. And their new Blackwell architecture just set a new record for large language model inference in the financial sector. But the more interesting strategic shift is that NVIDIA isn't really selling chips anymore. They're selling what they call AI factories. Their Vera Rubin platform is being marketed specifically as infrastructure built to handle the looping workloads of agentic AI. Whole rack-scale supercomputers designed for one job: feed the contractors. This week, NVIDIA published something that I think deserves more attention than it got. They argued that, quote, cost per token is the only metric that matters, full stop. If you're not a machine learning person, your eyes might glaze. So let me put it in plain English. A token is the unit of AI thought. It's roughly equivalent to a syllable of a word. Every time a model reads a document, writes a line of code, or makes a decision, it processes thousands of tokens. In the chatbot era, you might use 500 tokens to generate a polite email. In the agentic era, a single AI contractor might chew through 50,000 tokens just to analyze data, make a plan, and place a trade. The volume jumped by 2 orders of magnitude. So if you're running 1 million of those tasks a day, the cost of a single token literally dictates your profit margin. That's why investors have stopped asking how smart a model is. They're ruthlessly optimizing for which model produces the cheapest tokens at the necessary quality. Think about what that means. Companies like NVIDIA and AWS are now the landlords of this new economy, collecting rent on every syllable of machine thought. That's a real business, a multi-trillion-dollar business. And it didn't exist 3 years ago. The thing about a factory, though, is that it has to be plugged in somewhere. And the energy question keeps coming up because it's the constraint you can't innovate your way out of. You can't out-engineer the laws of physics. You can't keep a Vera Rubin rack running if the local grid blows a transformer. NVIDIA's briefing this week made an interesting argument. They claim AI factories can actually help stabilize local energy grids because they're what's called power flexible. Unlike a hospital, which absolutely must have uninterrupted power, an AI training run can be throttled. Surplus solar at noon? Ramp the factory up. Heat wave straining the grid? Throttle it down. That's a clever pitch. But you can already see the limit. You can throttle a training run because nobody's waiting on it in real time. You cannot throttle a Robinhood agent in the middle of executing a trade. Inference, the live decision-making, has to happen instantly or it's worthless. Training is flexible. Inference is not, and inference is what the entire agentic economy will run on. Which is why, very quietly this week, compute stopped being just a tech issue. It became a national security issue. The 2026 Stanford AI Index report dropped this week, and one finding jumped out at me. There's a massive contrast between the United States and China in how the public feels about AI. The Chinese public broadly shows high excitement and acceptance. The American public is significantly more nervous. Public sentiment drives corporate strategy, which drives policy, which drives who wins. And then there's Europe, playing a completely different game. The EU AI Act is taking effect with an August 2026 deadline for enforcement of what's called Chapter 5. For listeners who don't want to read 300 pages of regulation, here's the short version. Chapter 5 imposes strict obligations on providers of what the law calls general-purpose AI models, the big foundational ones like GPT-4 or Gemini that can be adapted to do almost anything, as opposed to narrow models built to do one thing well. The EU is mandating heavy transparency, risk assessment, and compliance reporting on these systems. They're even setting up regulatory sandboxes where companies can test for compliance before going to market. Here's the strategic question I keep wrestling with. The EU is meticulously writing the traffic laws. The US and China are building the fastest possible race cars. Can the EU regulate its way to dominance by setting the gold standard for trustworthy AI? Or does heavy regulation just concede the innovation race to the countries hoarding talent and fast-tracking adoption? The EU is betting on what's called the Brussels effect, the idea that if you write the world's most rigorous rules, global markets adopt them by default because businesses crave legal certainty. That's worked for them before, on privacy law and on chemical safety. But the economic reality of the agentic era cuts against it, when first-mover advantage means decoupling your revenue from headcount the way Remote just did this week. Sitting in a compliance sandbox for 6 months is a very expensive way to be careful. While the superpowers fight over billion-dollar AI factories, something else is happening this week that I think deserves more attention. There's a parallel movement trying to bypass the entire centralized cloud and put the power directly onto your device. It's the rise of small models at the edge. Microsoft unveiled something this week called Magentic Light. It's a full agentic system, but it's optimized to run on small models, locally in your browser on your file system. You don't need to ping an AWS server in Virginia. It just runs there. Google leaned into the same trend with Gemma 4, which they're describing as, quote, byte for byte, the most capable open models, specifically designed to bring AI closer to the edge, meaning directly onto your phone or laptop. And NVIDIA itself noted that open source models running on Blackwell are now achieving the lowest token cost in the industry for inference providers. So how does a small model running on your laptop possibly compete with a trillion parameter giant in a data center? It comes down to generalization versus specialization. The massive cloud models are Swiss Army knives that also happen to know the entire history of the Byzantine Empire and quantum physics. They have to be huge because they know everything. But if all you need is an agent that can organize your spreadsheets, draft your emails, and manage your local files, it doesn't need to know about the Byzantine Empire. It just needs to know Excel. A small specialized model is a scalpel, trained narrowly, incredibly lightweight, very fast. And the economics for a business are wild. Run an agent locally, and you bypass the cloud fees entirely. You bypass the latency because your data isn't traveling across the internet. And critically, you bypass the data privacy nightmare because your company's proprietary information never leaves your hardware. For enterprise adoption, that last one alone is enormous. The media still loves the sci-fi image of one giant centralized brain sitting in a desert data center. But maybe the future isn't one giant brain. Maybe it's billions of tiny specialized brains working locally in our pockets. The picture that's emerging is bifurcated. The massive factories handle the heavy lifting, complex multivariable reasoning, training the next foundation models. But your personal AI contractor, the one doing your actual day-to-day work, that increasingly lives on the device in your hand. So let me pull all of this together because this was a lot. This week, the AI industry quietly stopped building raw intelligence and started building autonomous economic ecosystems. Remote showed that revenue can decouple from headcount. NVIDIA confirmed that tokens are the currency of thought. The geopolitical map cracked into 3 camps: the US and China racing to deploy, the EU racing to regulate, and a counter-movement racing to decentralize the whole thing onto your laptop. The era of the autonomous intern has arrived. The defining skill of the next decade isn't writing the code or drafting the strategy, it's orchestrating the agents that do. And I want to leave you with one final detail from this week's sources that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. Buried in updates from Anthropic was a mention of an internal experiment they ran called Project Deal. They created an internal marketplace for their human employees, and then they put Claude in charge of buying, selling, and negotiating on behalf of those humans. They literally spun up an AI to AI market ecosystem inside the company. That's the logical endgame of everything we've talked about today. Picture it, your personal AI agent running locally on your phone, soon negotiating with a corporation's massive AI agent to buy your groceries, trade your stocks, book your travel, hire your contractors. The AIs do the dealing, the humans set the goals. What actually happens to the human economy when we are entirely removed from the transaction? Sit with that one. Thanks for going down this week with me. Pay attention to who's holding the keys. I'll see you on the next one.